Hello, Rachel. So I am interviewing Dr. Rachel Kowert this morning for my very first guest on my brand new YouTube series, all about interviewing local people close to me, Ottawa and surrounding area, who are have a talent, a story, anything that they want to share. They wrote a book or can sing, anything, an event, what have you. So I'm going to be starting this brand new series, and today my very first guest ever, again, Dr. Rachel Kowert. So I'm so happy that you allowed me to interview you and answered my little posts on Ladies Who Lunch about letting me interview you.
Of course, yeah, I'm excited, and I love the idea of talking to local people and seeing what's going on in the area, and I'm honored to be the first one.
Yes, I'm so excited, and I had the pleasure of meeting you the other day at your book signing. So first I should actually back up and say that we're going to be talking about your brand new children's book. That's amazing. I love it so far. It's great. It's called The Pragmatic Princess, and you're going to tell us all about it and the story behind it and the incredible way that it came to be with your amazing Kickstarter campaign. So let's just jump into it. So The Pragmatic Princess, I have it right here. It's not only a wonderful book, but it's beautiful. I love the little bump up crowns. That's so, just adds that much more to the whole thing. And my girls love that their names are in it. I showed them and they keep going and seeing their names, saying Delilah Harlan, Delilah Harlan.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. So let's start and just tell us all about how you came up with writing The Pragmatic Princess.
Yeah. So I have a 5-year-old daughter. She was 4 when I started writing this, and I was reading a lot of stories to her. So I went to a garage sale and a retired teacher, and I got like a bazillion books for like $100. So I was just reading them, all of them, one at a time. And every time I picked one up, I was like, they're not very good, number one. Number two, there's very few stories with a female character who is not one with superpowers or that in some point in the story requires help from a male character.
True.
And it was just irritating. So at the time, I actually emailed my friend Lizzie Huxley Jones, who runs a micro press over in the UK, and she had done several Kickstarters before. And I said, hey, there's this gap in the market. You should really take care of this. And she wrote back and she was like, well, we don't really do children's books, but maybe you should think about writing something to fill this gap. And I was like, I write science books. I'm a psychologist. I write textbooks. I don't write children's books. And she was like, just give it a go. And I was like, all right. And within less than a month, I had written a rough draft of all the 26 stories.
Wow.
In the book. So
you know it's meant to be when then you can write it that fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the beginning. And they were just stories on my phone that I thought were kind of cool. And my mom, you know, my biggest champion, really encouraged me to try and put them out into the world. And so through her efforts, I ran a Kickstarter to get it published, and we raised $26,000 in less than 30 days. And we published it, and now it is here in the world.
That is incredible. I can't believe we had $26,000 raised in less than 30 days. Why do you think that your Kickstarter was so successful? Like, what do you think was the piece of it that just got the most attention?
Yeah, I think because it's different, and I think people realize that we need stories where everyday girls do everyday things with their everyday abilities, because that's what we are. And the importance of models in childhood, I mean, they teach us, you know, about our limitations and about our abilities and the things we can and can't do. And there's a lot of research looking into the role that these models play. So I think that, you know, people just realize like, hey, actually, we don't have any books that show everyday girls just kind of figuring out how to be the new kid at school or how to overcome being afraid of failing. And it's a big difference between talking to your child about not being afraid to fail versus like having a story that shows how another child demonstrates how they get through that. And I think that's really a good learning tool that was just missing. And if it does exist, and it might also exist in like other books here and there wasn't just like all of it combined in a single book. It's like, here you go. Here's a little toolkit for you to take to your kids and help, teach them all these different things.
Awesome. No, it's wonderful. I mean, it's just so incredible. So so inspiring. So
you liked it, right? You've been reading it.
Oh, I know. I love it. I love it. Like they started reading it to them and they just walked away and I just kept reading.
Awesome.
My favorite story so far, and I don't really want to jump into actually the stories yet, but is Eliana the Energetic. I just love how the lady approaches her because she's so positive and optimistic, and then she's like, what? She doesn't even realize. And then, it just goes from there, like this little old lady, but yeah. So now you've talked a lot about the science behind the writing and having that part as a piece of literature. Can you go into detail about or explain how exactly what you mean about the science of it all? And I've read about it behind, like in the back of the book, but just so you can share it with others.
Of course. So I'm a psychologist. I'm a research psychologist, so I can't go far without taking science with me. So when I was developing the stories, I wanted to use what I knew about learning and the importance of role models and how role models are most effective and integrate that all into the book. So for instance, all the stories rhyme. And that was very important to me. One, as a parent, the rhyming books are the most fun for me to read. So I wanted to make a book that was fun to read. But two, rhyming supports pre-reading and literacy skills.
Right.
So for the younger children, this is really important for helping them learn sounds and letter recognition. I also made it an A to Z book to reinforce letter recognition as well. And then other things like modeling. So the girls in the book are very diverse because we learn best from role models who look like us. And when I started digging into the literature of the diversity of children's books, pretty sad. Of the best-selling books of 2019, I think it was something like there were in 2 of the 100 books, they were children who were disabled and neither of them had a speaking role. So that's just like one piece of it.
That's very sad.
Oh, it was terrible. And the more I looked into it, I was like, okay, so I tried my best to make a book full of characters that best represent the world around us. So Eliana, as you mentioned, she uses a wheelchair. If you get to Ursula towards the end, she's hearing impaired and she uses sign language. And that story is kind of about people who are different than us. I tried to incorporate girls of as many different backgrounds as possible. Una, for instance, it's not mentioned in her stories. It's not central to it, but she is developed to be someone who was adopted. She's in a mixed race family. You see her with her siblings. You can tell that they're not all clearly from the same parents. So I just really tried to do my best to feel that everyone I could include was included, because the power of seeing yourself in a book cannot be understated.
Exactly. And inclusion is such a big part of everything. Like it's sadly a big, huge missing piece. How many people don't feel included in school, to the workplace, to social circles? It's it's even on social media, people don't feel included enough, and it's a great piece that you brought into this book, like a huge part of it that children can see and feel better about themselves, right? Not even just girls, but boys as well too. It's not just for girls, because it's called the Pragmatic Princess. It's for everybody. Everybody needs to learn all of those skills that you incorporated into the back too, and talk about the empathy, and all of that kind of thing. So no, that's awesome. So now, how did you come up with the names for the characters?
Oh, that was the most fun part, right? Naming the characters. I wrote the stories in order from A to Z.
So you knew from the beginning you wanted to do it alphabetically?
I did. Well, I knew I wanted it to be, when I originally had the idea, I thought it would be neat if it was an A to Z. And I thought of the idea of having like a name and an adjective and writing it that way.
Right.
Then when it came to naming them, at least half of them are named and modeled after people that I know. So Eliana, I have a dear friend in England, and she has a daughter named Eliana, who was born with spina bifida and uses a wheelchair primarily to get around. So that's based off her. Christina the Curious is based off of one of my very dear friends. So a lot of the names were kind of preset because they were my friends. Valerie is based off my mother. That's her name. And the ones that weren't, I just picked names I liked. You know, like Xena is modeled after Xena, the warrior princess, because she's awesome. I don't know anyone named Xena, but I was like, I'm going to make a little girl that has like a black shirt with some gold accessories and really, you know, is the spirit of Xena, the warrior princess. So yeah, that was like the fun, creative part of it for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I that was one of my questions about if why you came up with the names and if they were people that you knew, or and if not, how you guys came about them. But that's cool. That's awesome. Actually leads me to another point of the back of the book in your acknowledgments. I notice how you have a lot of thanks for a lot of strong celebrities, strong female celebrities, excuse me. And I was wondering how you came up with that. Is that those people obviously people that you inspire you, and can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. So the whole kind of theme about the book generally is you can build your own castle, right? So we all have these stories of little girls dream of living in a big castle. Oh, you find a prince and you run off with them. And my motto is kind of like, well, no, you pick up a hammer and you can build your own. And the ability for women to do that is obviously paved in like years and years of history of the women before us who kind of push the boundaries at what women in society are generally allowed to do or capable of doing. And I think there are some really good role models out there who have paved the way before us, which allow for a book like this to even exist in the world. And I list a lot of them in the back, like Oprah Winfrey or Lady Gaga. You know, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them listed in the back, but they're all, you know, all of them have taught me something, and all of them have paved the road for the rest of us to walk down.
Yeah, I really am inspired by Ellen DeGeneres. So when I saw her name, I thought, you know, it's got to be about people who inspire you, strong, confident female celebrities. So yeah, I'm glad that you added that and that you explained that further. That's very
Ellen
important.
is a great choice. So the character Kristen the Kind was actually, she's the love child of what Ellen DeGeneres and Kristen Bell would be. I feel like they were inspired by, because what I love about Ellen, I love lots of things, but her sign off, be kind to one another. It's just so, kindness is such an easy thing to do. It just takes a little bit of effort and it makes such a difference.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that of all the things that she could say in her show, like she could say goodbye, have a good night, whatever. It's just a message of kindness, and I love it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's for sure. So we've already talked about the background behind the characters and people that you know and people that you kind of created. So we've talked so much about almost all my questions almost.
That's good.
So this book, The Pragmatic Princess, so how did you come up with like building your own castle? I noticed your shirt and I noticed it on Saturday.
Yeah.
So and the color purple too. I'm sure it's got a very big reason, and you know, purple is a very powerful color, you know, especially in royalty and years. So are those some specific reasons behind those things?
Yeah. So I love the color purple, but it is, as you mentioned, the color of royalty. And the idea of these stories, I wrote the stories before I had a name for the stories. And I came up with Pragmatic Princess because I thought, you know, girls like stories about princesses. And then I thought of like castles, right? Mm-hmm. And build your own castle just organically came from it, because I thought, okay, I want princesses who solve their own problems. So, and alliteration is always fun. So that's how I came up with just pragmatic. But I was like, well, they're not actually princesses in the story, right? I mean, they're girls, but they're not princesses in medieval times. So yeah, I don't know. It just kind of came out of nowhere as I was just thinking about the imagery that I wanted to have, and the idea, like even on the cover, there's a picture, they're like building a castle on like the set of a stage. And I just really like the idea of incorporating like these fairy tale elements, which we all love. I mean, there's nothing wrong with fairy tales. There's nothing wrong with superpowers. You know, Princess in Black is a series of books that my daughter loves, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're great. I just think that there's room for everything, and we should also include stories that are just about everyday challenges and everyday things. And
exactly.
You know.
Yeah. That's great. So do you have plans to build on this book? Like, so build your own castle. I know you've got a website and it talks about the book and the science behind it, but do you have plans to grow from there with, like, let's say activities or other events, or even so another kind of second question in here, but do you have plans for another book, maybe another piece of this in the future?
Yeah, so I do not want to do another Kickstarter because that was so stressful. And even though it was successful, I really just don't want to go down that road again. So currently with this book, so Pragmatic Princess was published in December. So my current plans, I'm trying to find a book agent or a book publisher who will pick it up and handle the distribution of the book on a wider scale.
Okay.
So that's currently what I'm working towards, just because I'm a one-woman show at the moment. So I'm planning some more like events around the book in the local Ottawa area. But in terms of like moving forward, I have so many ideas. I would love to do a follow-up book about the girls at Career Day. So write stories about different occupations, like Ophelia, the observant in the book. I would love to do like Ophelia, the optometrist, and write like a little story about that, or whatever, things that correspond. I would love to do that. And I would love to write a follow-up with boys. I've actually started writing that, but I don't want to publish it to Kickstarter. So I'm trying to find other avenues to support the production and distribution of these books, because I also have a full-time job. I work for a mental health nonprofit. I also have 2 children. So this is just kind of like a side project that I really, truly love and would love to spread to the whole world. But I can only devote so much time to it.
Yeah, you don't have enough time.
Yeah, not enough hours in the day. It's always
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
So your website though, so are you gonna, besides promoting your book, talking about it, are you gonna add other things to it? I briefly looked at it, I know, but are you going to, I know you had coloring sheets on you at your signing on Saturday. Like, are you gonna have things like that on your website? Or
Yes. Yeah, I would love to definitely continue up and expand and create new content for it, like the coloring sheets. We have a couple. I think you can download them off the website. If not, I'll add that on there. You should be able to.
that's cool.
But yeah, I think that would be really nice.
Yeah, no, it's a very nice website. I mean, every author needs a website and to promote their books and whatnot. So yeah, no, I was curious about that. That would be kind of cool for kids who read your book. They can download coloring.
Yeah.
So, so speaking of books, you know, you've said you've written some other books. Obviously, they've been science books, like psychology. So nothing related to this kind of thing. This is your first children's book ever.
Yes.
Awesome. So, I wanted to ask you about your favorite book as a child that you can remember, and your first recollection of the first book you could ever remember reading, and what the message was.
I remember my favorite book as a child was probably Where the Sidewalk Ends, Shel Silverstein, the poetry. I really love that book. And actually, when I was originally going to do Pragmatic Princess and I wasn't sure if the Kickstarter funds were going to be raised, I was like, maybe I could tailor it back and do illustrations kind of like Shel Silverstein, where it was just kind of like the poetry and just like the little line drawings. I really love him very much, and I'm very inspired by that book. One of the first books I remember reading as a kid, like on my own, and just reading over and over and over and over and just loving it, was there's 2 I can think of. The first is the Berenstain Bears Messy Room, and I think I love that one because I loved how clean the room was at the end, with like they have like their closet and it's all organized, and that was clearly direct inspiration for Noah the Neat. I don't know if you've gotten to N yet, but it's about a messy room and how it becomes organized at the end. maybe I'm one of those people who like stationery stores and
Oh,
organizations. So it spoke
I
to
hear
me.
ya.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also really like the Boxcar Children's series. I remember reading
Okay.
a lot as a kid, maybe a
Yeah.
little old for that, but I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. What about you? Do you have a favorite childhood story?
Um, the first kind of book I think I can remember, well, for some reason, always I'm always drawn back to this book I had. It was Old Mother Hubbard, but
Oh
it was, yeah, and it
yeah,
was like a really cute book, with it was so short, obviously so short. Everybody knows probably the Old Mother Hubbard, but it was just, it always bring it back to my memory. And then I have one, which is actually my sister got a book for me called oh my gosh, it totally has left my memory.
right.
Okay, so it was a book about a bunny. It's very short. It's a board book. She bought it for me, and when I was a kid, and I remember reading it over and over again. And then somehow along the way, I lost it. I don't know what happened with it. Maybe my parents gave it away. Anyway, while I was pregnant for my twins, I went into a store, and there was one copy of it on the shelf, and it was kind of like a little tiny bit warped, just a little bit. But I was like, I need to have this book because I love this book, and I mean, there's only one left. It's a sign. So I bought it. They gave me a discount because it was warped a little bit. But it's just about I wish I'm gonna put the name of the book like
Oh, well.
in the blurb on YouTube, because it's here but it's gone. And yeah, it was so cute. It's about a bunny, and he talks about the seasons.
Oh, cute.
Gosh, yeah. Anyway, my kids have it, but yeah, it was just a cute little book. It's just cutesy little books. Those are really the first kind of two books that pop into my mind when I think about that. So I was thinking, what kind of books in uh in the children's fiction that you can think of that kind of maybe have some sort of relation to your book? I know you said there aren't many at all, and I was trying to think too. I came up with the Paper Bag Princess, by Robert Munsch. She's like has this prince who's trying to like save her, and she's like, I'm just gonna do it myself. Wear a paper bag. And then I thought of Shrek. How Princess Fiona goes to save her, and she's just like saves herself.
Yeah.
But can you think of any other ones that ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, I mean, that maybe not that are exactly like the self-rescuing princess, but I really love, I want to say it's Andrea Beatty. That could not be her name. I could be wrong. But there's a series of books. It's Ada to a Scientist, Rosie Revere Engineer. She has a couple. She just has a new one that I don't own. But both of those books, they rhyme. I already like them. But they're about, girls. Like Ada to a Scientist is about a girl scientist, and she just wants to find her own answers and do her own thing. And her parents are like, what are you doing? And she's like, no, I need to get to the bottom of this, and I need to pursue this. And Rosie Revere Engineer is similar. She wants to be an engineer, and she fails at it, but her aunt comes in and says, you didn't fail, that's a great first try, it succeeded a little bit, let's just try again and do it again. And she persists, and it's it has a similar story and a similar theme of like being empowered and doing your own thing, and failure is okay. And so I really love those two. They're not exactly the same as mine, but
No, there is absolutely no book that is like exactly the same like this. This is beyond phenomenal. I mean, I think everybody should buy this for their children. Like, it's sad and good in two ways. It's bittersweet. So for an author, you write a first book. I mean, you and I both have, and you think, awesome, it's gonna be so wonderful, I love it, people have said it's great, I'm gonna get it out there, and it's like gonna blow up. But how many people write books a day, right, and publish them? But people need to know about this book. Like, I have a girlfriend, she's also in similar field to you, well, yes and no, anyway, and she's just doctor, PhD.
Yeah.
But she would love this book. Like there's a lack of girls being promoted, and especially with difficulties, disabilities, different lives. The book has to be spread out there, and I'm so happy that you wanted me to interview and tell me about it, because I'm gonna share the heck out of this the book. Like, it's beautiful. I'm so happy that I met you. I mean, got a great message, and it's so inspiring. And now, lately in the news you hear about how women, and how women are trying really hard to make a change and do things that they wouldn't have normally been able to do before. I just heard, I think, on the news about the San Francisco Giants. Is that the football team? There's a female coach. She was just hired. Yeah. And the guy on the radio was like, "That's awesome. We need to hear more stories like that." And I was like, "Yeah, why not? Why can't a woman coach football?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I thought it was a wonderful story.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what are your hopes for this book? And your future behind it, and what do you hope that your customers will get from reading this?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that, well, it's multi-layered. I hope that the book helps open conversations with their children. A lot of times it's difficult to just sit down and open a conversation about, like, how does it feel to be the new kid at school? But reading the story, like Kristen the Kind talks about being kind to the new kid at school. It's basically the gist of it. Being able to read that with your child, and then you can talk about it in reference to, like, oh, how did you think that Jasmine, the new kid at school, felt when Kristen came over and talked to her? And it's a lot easier to start those conversations when you're talking about the fictional characters, but really you're connecting with your child about how they feel and how to act and behave. And I really hope it opens the discussion about that. And just for the parents listening, I did write a story specifically about being on your phone too much. For me, to help me, but also to help everybody else, because that's a conversation we have to have. So I hope that parents see it as a tool. I also, one of my main goals with it is to get the book in the classroom, because I think that it is a fantastic tool for teachers who are trying to teach their students about social and emotional learning, which I know they do anyway. I think it could be a really good tool to have these stories demonstrating these lessons versus having, to sit and talk and trying to academically explain, like, what empathy is, for instance. Yeah. So my goals are really to try to get it into spaces for education. But I just want people to have it and love it. And they're fun books. They're not, I know I talk about it like they're super serious. There's jokes in there. It's lighthearted. It's funny. It rhymes. It's not like super serious. It just has the learning interwoven within it.
Yeah. No, I definitely, again, it's perfect because they've got, 26 stories. They rhyme. They're short. They have wonderful messages. And the pictures. Was your illustrator?
Oh, let's talk about my illustrator, because he's wonderful. His name is Randall Hampton. He is based in Michigan, and he wrote a children's book that was on Kickstarter that I love called The Little Game Master, which kind of introduces little children to tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. And it's the cutest little story, and I love his art. And so I approached him and I was like, I have this project, kind of a big one. What do you say? And he agreed to do it. And Randall really just brought it all to life. The illustrations are so beautiful. He did such a good job. And he was like, I'm dreaming of your characters. There's so many characters. But in the end, it all came together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now you self-published this. Did you at any time send your manuscript to publishers in hopes
I
of being
have sent
published?
it to well over 100 book agents and publishers before it was published and after. And it seems to be some just send you generalized letters that they send to everyone, like, oh, thanks for sending it, we'll be in touch, and then they're not. Some say, oh, we like it, but you already published it, so we're not interested in it now. And others, I think, are just afraid of the sheer volume of the book. But it exists now. It's in the world. It is, possible to publish such a big book. It's possible to have high ambitions. So now the key is I'm still reaching out to individuals if anyone is watching and is interested. Like I mentioned, just to expand the distribution, get it into classrooms, get it into bookstores, get it on a larger scale, because I can do everything I can to try and get the word out. And I think it is a great product, and people who read it all seem to really love it.
Yeah.
So it's just about letting people know it exists. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Well, I have strong faith that this book will be picked up. Like, publishers can still publish even if you self-published.
Of course.
That's just, and I'm sure that the topic and just the uniqueness of it and everything about A to Z, rhyming, all of that, I have a strong faith that it will be picked up by a publisher. And I have a lot of contacts with teachers. I used to work at an elementary school.
Oh, perfect.
We like telling them all about the book. We used to talk a lot about empathy, and I'm sure that they still do. When I worked at the school, it was a huge, huge thing, having feelings, trying to be able to relate and feel what the other person's feeling. We did much of roots of empathy. We'd bring the baby into the classroom, and they'd try to understand how the baby felt, different milestones. So yeah, it's something I would definitely be sharing with my teacher friends for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you think though the tricks are about? We talked about this briefly about what do you think it is about getting your book published? So we talked a little bit about that, and I gave you my thoughts about it's kind of like the book about you don't have to be popular, super pretty, magical, have 4-leaf clovers all around you just to get anywhere in the world. You just want to do it, you do it. So but we talked a little bit about how it's hard to get your book published, unless sometimes it does happen, right? Look at the lady that's wrote Harry Potter. I mean,
yes. It's funny, my mom always says she got rejected a bunch of times. That's how, and I Googled it. She got rejected like 10 times. I was like, rejected like hundreds of times.
Wow.
No, it does happen, and it's difficult. And I think children's literature is the most competitive market to try and break into. And when it comes, as I mentioned, I've published other books before. If I wanted to publish a textbook, I would know exactly where to go, and I know people there. But when you go to publish a children's book, I feel like if they don't know who you are, they just don't have time for you. And maybe, they are inundated, I'm sure. And a lot of publishers too won't talk to you unless you have an agent. So that's why I've been putting a lot of effort into trying to find a literary agent, in which I find a similar difficulty in, I don't know who you are, so I'm busy, Exactly. So it is really hard. I feel like you have to know someone who knows someone, or the right person just come across. Maybe the right person's watching this video. The right person has to come across it and believe in it as much as you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what
Call me.
Unfortunately, yeah, we're gonna put your contact information in the video. But no, it's just unfortunate that is the case. But again, children's literature is such a high demand and a big popular topic, right? Besides romance novels.
True. But it's so funny, like my friend Christina, who I named Christina after in the book, she told me the other day, she said, I went to Target and I was looking around the books, and sometimes you look around, and like I was saying with the books I was reading, some of them are not great and they get published. So when you make something that you really believe in, like your book is fantastic, and you make something that's of high quality, and it's like, this will surely get in, surely they'll read it if they're publishing these other things that aren't as good. But that's not the case.
It depends on the customer. It depends on who sees it, who tells you about it, where, who posts about it, where it's, written about in the paper, or who blogs about it.
Yeah.
Really, I think things need to be given a chance, and everybody needs to be able to speak about things that they believe in. And that's why I wanted to create this series, so that, people like you and I could talk and share about things that we're passionate in. And so people can hear, and from one little speck to another speck, and like dominoes, it just spreads.
That is how it works, though, really.
Exactly.
Truly.
Yeah. No. So where can people find your book?
Yes. Okay, so it's on Amazon CA.
Perfect.
It is on Amazon.com for the Americans watching. It is available at Chapters Canada. There are a few signed copies that I left behind. And if you want to learn more about the project, or if you want to get several copies for your school or whatever it might be, you can go to buildyourown.castle.com, and my contact information is also on there, and you can read all about the book and see the different other places that you can purchase it.
Awesome. So you're on Instagram, and I know you're on Twitter.
I am on Twitter, yes.
And you have a page on Facebook.
I do.
Yes. Are there any other places that you're on that we may have missed?
Nope. If you just do @YourOwnCastle, you will find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Perfect.
No,
awesome. So is there any last message or anything that you just want to share and leave us with, and talk about, let people know, and really push just?
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I think that thank you for having me on here, and I'm just happy that other people share the same passions that I do about education and about representation in media and about changing the narrative. I talked a lot about this during my Kickstarter campaign. It's far too long that so many children are not represented, and that the books that we have don't represent the world around us, people around us, the activities around us. And it's such a great learning tool at a young age. To see yourself represented doing everyday things and learning strategies and abilities to navigate the challenges that you are inevitably going to face. And that was really the motivation behind creating this book, for my daughter and for the world. So I hope that you pick up a copy and you love it. And if you do, let me know. I love to hear about who people's favorite character is. I love that you said Eliana, because everybody has a different one, and that is so interesting to me. And because they're all my babies, so I love them. But yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to end now, and I want to thank you again so much for allowing me and taking your time and chatting with me, being my first guest ever. So I'm going to sign off and say goodbye, and I hope you will check out Rachel's book. It is amazing, as we have said a million times in this video. And we're going to have all the information on the screen and in the blurb on the little YouTube. And yeah, thanks for joining us. And we will talk to you next time. Bye.